Alright, you should have turned your homework in the hotspot. That should already be graded quickly together as a class, and you should be close to being finished with this warm-up. This first one on the left, it says lines, lines, lines. You are matching the graph with the y-intercept with the slope, so just draw a line. You do not have to do the bottom, communicating about mathematics. And then the one on the right is match them up. You're matching the word problem with the graph as well as the equation. So I'll give you another minute to finish that, and then we will get started. Alright, for the left side, lines, 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 I want to draw a line from the graph to the y-intercept to the slope. So the first thing I always look for at a graph is definitely the y-intercept. So looking at this first graph, okay, it looks like the y-intercept here is positive 1, which in that case would be the second one, 0, 1. Would go there. This second graph, the y-intercept's negative 2, which is the last y-intercept, the fourth one. The third y-intercept looks like it's between positive 1 and 0, which would be 1/2. And then the last one, the y-intercept's negative 1, which would go all the way up to the first. So it should look like that for the first four. Okay, now let's look at the slope. So to determine the slope from a graph is we have to do rise over run. So let's do the first one. I'm going to pick 2 points. I'm going to use the y-intercept as 1. And I'm going to pick another one that intersects perfectly. I start with the farthest left point. I'm going to go up 2 over 1. So this slope is positive 2 to the right 1. So my slope here is 2 over 1, which means that the third one goes with the y-intercept and this graph. So I'm going to go ahead and connect those two. Okay, so again, the y-intercept here is 1 and the slope here is 2. This next one, pick 2 points. First of all, I know this is a negative slope because it's going down from left to right, so I know it has to be these two, one of these two. And from the farthest left point, I'm going down 1, so negative 1 over to the right 2, which would be negative 1/2. So this second graph that has a y-intercept of negative 2 has a slope of negative 1. This third graph, I'm not going to use the y-intercept here because it's a half. So, it looks like all of them are really halves. So let's pick this one. This looks about halfway as well. I might actually skip that one. Actually, what's one way I could determine already, since I used these two up, I've used this one and this one. Is this a positive or negative slope? It's a negative slope, so I know it would have to be negative 1. So for this one, the y-intercept's 1/2. The slope here is negative 1. Which means the last one, positive slope, if I pick 2 points, I'm going up 1 and over to the right 2, which would be a positive 1/2. So the y-intercept here was negative 1, and the slope here is 1/2. Okay, so always identifying if it's a positive or negative slope, that will get rid of at least 1 or 2 of our answer choices. Okay, let's look over on the other side. So again, same situation, we draw a line from the word problem to the graph to the y, or to the equation. So one of the things, I'm going to sort of work backwards at the same time. If I look at these equations, 2 of them have are proportional, they go through the origin, and then one of them has a y-intercept of 250. I notice this right here has a y-intercept of 250, so which graph does that go with? Okay, it should go with this graph right here, because the y-intercept here is 250. Okay, what would be the next thing I'm looking for? If I'm looking for the word problem matches with that graph, okay, I'm looking for something that has already $250, and then the slope here is going down, so I'm getting rid of money, or whatever the situation is as well. So if I read the first one, Alfonso received $250 as a gift, so he has $250. He spends, which means I would take away $20 each month to buy a new book. So he starts off with $250, which would be my y-intercept, and then he spends $20 each month. So that looks like that would go with the graph that we decided. Alright, let's look at the next one. Jackie's website gets 250 hits every 20 minutes, and John earns $8.25 per hour at his new part-time job. So I'm actually going to look at the graphs here. Okay, I notice they're both positive, okay, which means my slopes are positive, but they look very similar for the most part with the slope. So I'm going to look at the very last point, which would be, this one would be 20 and 250, and this one would be 20 and 160. So if I think about this, this one says Jackie's website gets 250 hits every 20 minutes. Well, if I look at the 20 mark on both of these graphs, 20, this one would be about 165. This is 20 and 250. So in this case, this graph would go here. Every 20 minutes, there's 250 hits. This one, John earns $8.25 per hour. So if I pick this point again, I'm estimating here. I have 160 y over x. 160 divided by 20-ish, or 165 divided by 20, is roughly 8.25, which would match up with how much he gets per hour. So it should look like this. And since this was about $8.25 per hour, this first graph matches up with this last equation, and this third graph matches with the first equation. So it should look like that. Okay, what I want you to do now is, once you have this information, okay, I want you to fold this in half, and we're going to glue this in, just because it's going to be a great tool to look at later on. So wherever you do your warm-ups, I want you to go ahead and glue that in. And once you have that glued in, I want you to go ahead and head the next page in your journal with what we're doing today. It is 3-4 point slope formula. Today is October 13th, 2016. And go ahead and write down this question. I want you to write an equation describing a line that passes through 4, -2 with a slope of 1/2. Look back in your notes from the last couple days if you need to. So go ahead and glue in the warm-up, head your journal, fill out your table of contents, write this equation down, and start working. Give you a couple minutes to do all that, and then we'll begin. So today we're going to talk about the 3-4 point slope formula. Again, this is another type of formula that describes linear functions. But we already know how to solve this problem that I want you to answer. Okay, it says write an equation describing the line that passes through this point. So we know this point is on the line, and it has a slope of 1/2. So what do I have to do here to figure out the equation for the line? Well, as of right now, what we do know is the equation of the line has to be in this form, y equals mx plus b, because that describes any linear equation. Now, there's something else we can plug in. It says, what is the slope? And the slope here is 1/2. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in y is equal to 1/2 x plus b. So far, so good. That's what we know. Now, how can I use this point in my equation? What does the 4 represent in this ordered pair? Okay, remember that's my x value, and then the -2 represents my y value. So what I can do is, along with the slope, I'm going to plug in -2 for the y value, recopy the 1/2 as the slope, and plug in 4 for the x value. Now that's all the information that they gave me. They gave me the point, the x and the y, and they gave me the slope. Again, I want to write the equation. I already know the slope, so my equation is going to be y is equal to 1/2 x something, because I need to figure out what that b is. So let's go ahead and solve this. 1/2 times 4 is going to be 2. And then from there, to get b by itself, to get rid of this positive 2, I'm going to subtract 2 on both sides. So that leaves me with negative 4 is equal to b. So once I solve for that y-intercept, okay, now all I have to do is plug that into the equation. The slope here is 1/2. Y equals mx plus b, which would be negative 4. So my equation here is 1/2 x minus 4. Now that's a lot of steps just to figure out the equation for this line. And I can't really plug this into my calculator because they only give me 1 point in the slope. So that's why they came up with this formula, the point slope formula. Okay, now before I actually show you what that is, okay, when we would use this point slope formula is when we want to write the equation when we're given a point and a slope. So let's look at the inside cover with our formula chart under the linear. Okay, so far we talked about slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. If you look right underneath that is your point slope form. Now let's take a look at the letters that they use here. Okay, m, we already know. What does m represent? That's the slope. Okay, the x and the y's always stay there. And then we have x1 and y1. What do you think that represents? Again, this is called point slope form. So we're given the slope, which is the m, and the point is our x1 and our y1. Okay, so let's go ahead and write this formula down and discuss it just a little bit more so we feel pretty confident going into what we're going to be doing. So go ahead and write this pretty large. Y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. Okay, this is again our point slope formula. Okay, so like I said before, our x and our y is just going to be x and y in the equation. We know that the m represents our slope. That will not change. And the x1 and y1 come from the point that they give us. So this is going to represent the y value from the point that they give us, and the x1 represents the x value from the point that they give us. So go ahead and write that down. And we're actually going to do the same problem that we did before using this formula to see if it's quicker and see if you like it better. So from the equation or the problem that we first did today, okay, I gave you this point, which is 4, negative 2, and I said the slope here is 1/2. Okay, so let's go ahead and plug in what we know. So I'm going to write the problem first. Y minus y1 equals m x minus x1, and I'm going to plug in what I know. So this y stays the same. Y minus the y1. Okay, remember this is my x1 and y1 because that's the point they give me. So I'm going to plug in negative 2. Now whenever I plug anything in, I use the parentheses. So I have y minus negative 2. M is my slope, which is 1/2. And the x comes down. X minus my x1 is 4. So it should look like that. Okay, so now I want to solve here. So if I look on the left side, y minus negative 2. Two negatives ends up making a what? Positive. So I should have y plus 2 on the left side. Now over here I have x minus 4, which is fine. I'm going to recopy that just so you see that. Now how do I simplify this right side? Okay, I have a variable and a number, so I'm going to have to do something with this 1/2. What do I have to do to get rid of those parentheses? I have to distribute the 1/2 times everything in the parentheses, which leaves me with y plus 2 on the left. 1/2 times x is 1/2 x. 1/2 times -4 is -2. And my last step here is to get y by itself, because again I want to get it into y equals mx plus b. Why would I want to get it into y equals mx plus b? Because when it's in that form, slope-intercept form, okay, then I can plug in my calculator, I can find out all the other points on that line, I can do a lot of things. We always want to get it into y equals mx plus b. So this is an easier formula to use to get it into y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to take away 2 on both sides. Now again, I can write it right underneath this one. So I have y is equal to 1/2 x, -2 minus 2 is -4. So I end up getting the same answer that I did from up here, okay, just maybe a shorter time period of spent because it came a little bit quicker. Okay, now another thing that we're going to have to do, flip over to the next page, is I might give you the equation and you have to tell me from the equation that's in point slope form what is the point and what is the slope. So say I give you this equation, let's say y minus 2 is equal to 4x plus 4. And I'm going to go ahead and write the equation up at the top on this page just so I have it. Y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. So from this equation, I gave it to you in point slope form. I want to know what is the slope and what is the point. So the slope's the easiest one to identify because again the slope is always going to be what's in front of the parentheses. Slope here would be 4. Now we know that the point is our x1 and y1. So it's going to have to be these numbers right here. Now this is where it comes to be a little bit tricky. Notice it's y minus y1. So it should say y minus whatever this is, y1. So in this case, the y1 would be 2. This one is x minus x1. Well then, how did I get this plus sign here? It has to be x minus something. So the only way it could become positive is if that number was actually -4. So let me rewrite it over here. Okay, if I know y minus y1, it would be y minus whatever that value is. The slope stays the same, and then it would be x minus x1. But I have that 4 there, so how could it be a positive 4? What would have to go here? It would have to be a -4. Okay, because remember, 2 negatives makes a positive. So when they ask me what the point is, okay, the point here is the y is 2 and the x is -4. And this will take some practice for you to identify, but you will get the hang of it. Okay, let's try another one. Let's try y plus 6 equals negative, parentheses, x minus 2. See if you and your partner can figure out what the slope is and what the point is for this equation. Okay, right away you should identify the slope. Okay, the slope here is just a negative sign, but we know what really is sitting in front of this parentheses if it's just negative. It's really a -1. So my slope here is -1. And I'm looking at my two numbers that they give me for the actual point. And I'm going to rewrite my equation to make sure it matches. Remember, it's y minus y1. Well, this is a plus sign, so the only way I could get a plus 6 as if the y1 was a negative 6. Okay, because again, 2 negatives makes a positive. Okay, the negative 1 is the slope, and then I have x minus x1. Well, if it's x minus 2, I know the x1 is just 2. So now, when identifying that point, you should have gotten that the x value is 2 and the y value is negative 6. Okay, let's just try one more. Try this one by yourself. Give you a couple minutes to work on that. Let's do y plus 7 is equal to 3/2 x minus 2. Again, find the slope and find the point. Okay, so right away I know that the slope here is 3/2 because that's my m in the equation. And I'm looking at the point 7, positive 7, and negative 2 over here. So if I think about my equation, it's y minus y1, which this is a positive 7, so it has to be a negative 7 for the y1. Slope here is 3/2. And then I have x minus x1, so it's x minus whatever this x1 is, which is a positive 2. So your point here should be 2, negative 7. Okay, so you have 3 examples there. Make sure you look over those tonight while you're working on your assignment to make sure you're clear on that. So again, we have our point slope formula. You are able to identify the slope and the point from the formula. And now what we want to do is we want to write an equation from the slope and a point. So getting a little bit more practice, and what we're going to do after we write the equation in point slope form is we're going to write it into slope intercept form, because again, we want to change everything to slope intercept form so it's easier for us to graph. So we'll do about 1 or 2 together, and then I'm going to have you work on a couple by yourself and then check with your neighbor. So let's start off with the first one. Let's say that the slope is 2 and this point is on the line. Okay, so again, I know I should use point slope formula because they give me a slope and a point. So I'm going to go ahead and write my point slope formula down. Every single time we do this, y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Now this is on our formula chart, but by the time you are finished with this unit, you should have it memorized. But always double check by looking at the reference materials. So let's plug in what we know. Okay, remember we plug in everything with parentheses. So I have y minus, what's the y1 value? Again, this is x and y. So the y1 value here would be 4. The slope here is 2. And I have x minus x1, which is 6. Now I don't put the slope in parentheses, but you can. It just looks confusing to me when I do that. Okay, so we're technically done here. If I want to get rid of the parentheses, I have y minus 4 is equal to 2, x minus 6. That right there is point slope formula. Okay, that's all. We just substituted it in. Now from the point slope formula, we need to be able to convert that to slope intercept, which is y equals mx plus b. So from here, I'm going to recopy what we have, which is y minus 4 equals 2x minus 6. And I'm going to change this into y equals mx plus b. So the left side stays the same. I don't have to do much with that. How do I get rid of the parentheses over here? I'm going to have to distribute that 2 to everything on the inside of the parentheses, which leaves me with 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. Okay, from there, I'm going to get y by itself, because again, I want it in y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to add 4 on both sides. And I end up getting y is equal to 2x minus 8. Okay, that is my equation. That is in slope-intercept form. Now, remember, these two mean the same thing. It's just a different way of writing it. It's a different form. However, both of these have the same slope. Correct? The slope here is 2, because that's the m in our equation. And the slope here is 2 as well, because that's the m in our equation. So we have to make sure that the slopes are always the same. Now this represents a point, okay, on the line. This represents the y-intercept. If I graph this, let's go ahead and take our calculators and graph this. Let's go to y equals, clear whatever you have. Let's type in 2x minus 8. I'm going to graph it. Okay, remember our y-intercept here is negative 8, which that's what it looks like. It's a positive slope. It's going up 2 over 1. Let's go to our table to see if this point 6, 4 is on that line. So second graph, 6, 4 is on that line. If I look at the y-intercept, when x is 0, the y is negative 8. So I know I did that correctly. Okay. Now let's try another one. Let's try this one by yourself now. So again, I want you to write this into point slope form and then slope intercept form. So the slope here is negative 5 and 1 comma 2 is on the line. So I want you to write it in point slope form, because I give you the slope and a point, and then I want you to convert that to slope intercept form. Okay, we'll give you a couple minutes to do that. Check with your neighbor when you're done, and then we'll push play to go over the answer. Okay, so for point slope formula, I have y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. I'm plugging in what I know. So I have y minus my y1 would be 2. Slope here is negative 5. And x minus x1, which is a positive 1. So my answer here in point slope formula is y minus 2 equals negative 5 x minus 1. Again, that's point slope formula. Okay, but again, we want to convert everything into slope intercept form if we can. So I'm going to take that point slope formula and I'm going to go ahead and convert it. So I'm going to distribute that negative 5, which I hope you did. Y minus 2 falls down. Negative 5 times x is negative 5x. Negative 5 times negative 1 is a positive 5. To get y by itself, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So I should have y is equal to negative 5x plus 7. Raise your hand if you got that. Okay, and again, that's slope intercept form. Okay, now the reason why we have that in slope intercept form is because that's how we want to graph. So to graph anything that's in point slope form, we must triple star this, change to y equals mx plus b. And go ahead and highlight that. Whenever we want to graph anything, it needs to be in slope intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. So we'll do one quick one. I'll give it to you in point slope formula, and we will convert that to slope intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. So let's do y minus 2 equals 5 x minus 3. Okay, again, that's in point slope formula. There's my slope, there's my point, and I'm going to convert it. So First thing I need to do is distribute that 5 to the x and the negative 3. So that leaves me with y minus 2 is equal to 5x minus 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. To get y by itself, I'm going to add 2 to both sides, which leaves me with my equation y is equal to 5x minus 13. From here, I'm able to plug that in my calculator and solve. Okay, so again, whenever we graph anything, we need to change it to slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Now, what happens if they give us 2 points? So they don't give us a point and a slope, they give us 2 points. For instance, let's say this. Let's say 4, comma, negative 1, and negative 8, comma, negative 10. Give us these 2 points and say, okay, what is the equation in point-slope form? So, given 2 points and they want us to tell us the answer in y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Given 2 points, our answer needs to be this. What in the world do I do here? Take a second to share with your partner about what you would do to figure out how to change these 2 points to get the slope as well as another point. Okay, the first thing that I would do is definitely find the slope. Okay, if I know in my equation I need to find the slope, I know how to find the slope between 2 points because we've been doing that for a while. This is my first point, so x1, y1, and this is my second point, x2, y2. And remember, the equation that we use is going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. This is to find the slope. So if I go ahead and insert what I know, y2 is negative 10 minus y1, which is negative 1, all over x2, negative 8, minus x1, which is 4. This is going to tell me just the slope. So from here, I'm going to solve. So negative 10 minus negative 1, 2 negatives swishes into a positive. So negative 10 plus 1 is negative 9. Negative 8 minus 4 is negative 12. Okay, 2 negatives makes a positive, so that's really 9/12. And I can simplify that because 3 goes into both those numbers. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So my slope here is 3/4. Okay, so from here I'm going to plug in what I know, okay, for my equation. So I have y minus y1. Do I know a y1 and an x1 here? Yeah, I do. I'm going to use this first one. The y1's negative 1. Okay, so I have that y1 equals my slope that I found is 3/4. And I have x minus, and since I used the y1 for this first point, I'm going to use the x1 for the second part. That's my equation. Okay, if I simplify that a little bit more, 2 negatives makes a positive, so it would be y plus 1 equals 3/4 x minus 4. Okay, that's one way that you can write from 2 points, write the equation. Okay, if I wanted to find the y-intercept from 2 points, okay, again, I would plug it in to find the slope, pick any one of these points, doesn't matter which one, and then convert that to y equals mx plus b. Okay, so that's pretty much what we're going to talk about today. We're going to finish this up tomorrow as well. But what I have for you, and I'm just going to glue this on the inside of the cover, these are the steps that we just took. Okay, so I'm going to have someone hand that out to everyone, and we're going to glue that in. And once it's glued in, we'll take a look at it. So once that's glued in, again, this is everything that we just did. The steps to change point slope into slope-intercept form, these are the steps we took. Steps to graph a point-slope form. We always change it to slope-intercept. And how do you write a point-slope equation from 2 points? Those are the steps. So everything we just did with the examples is all right here in your steps. Alright, you have no homework today. We'll finish this up tomorrow, so we'll refresh your memory, and you'll have an assignment tomorrow that will be due at the end of class. Have a great day, study these notes, and we will see you tomorrow.